Welcome to 2022. So for a lot of December, I actually go through this process and I figured that I create this video and probably help out some other agents that may be going through the same process. But I spend a lot of my December planning for 2022. And I'm not talking about, your personal New Year's resolutions or anything like that. I'm talking from a realtor, real estate brokerage business perspective only. So, but one of the things that in order for you to plan for 2022, you have to know where you ended up for 2021 and what your goals were for 2021 and what worked and what didn't, and then how you can improve. So you basically have to track it, right? So, like I said, I spent a lot of my December, the last month of the year, kind of cleaning up my 2021 books, kind of seeing, where we ended up at. And then from there, I can try to adjust my strategy, what I need to do for 2022. Now, before we get to that, a little bit of background about myself is that one, I am actually a licensed CPA in the state of Texas. Prior to my real estate career, you could say, was that I spent 5-6 years in public accounting for at two different Big Four accounting firms, Ernst & Young and PricewaterhouseCoopers. So, I would say that I probably have a little bit of credibility in regards to, talking about accounting. Did it for a good amount of time. Also, obviously, I went to school for it, got my CPA, got my accounting degree, did it for a while, and then moved on to real estate. So before we get to that, and then kind of leading up into talking about accounting, is that I think one of the things that I must say is that for 2022, if you haven't done it already, right? You got to brand yourself. You got to create a brand for yourself. So for any agents that are with, KEW, EXP, and I'm not talking about to the ones that, you got an EXP tattoo or license plate. You guys are kind of too far the other way for me to change your mind at this point. But for anybody else, if you're still using a Keller Williams or EXP, nothing wrong with those emails. They serve their purpose. They're an email, but I would never use a company's email unless I created the company. So my point is that you should always brand yourself and have that email with you wherever you choose to go, whichever brokerage you ever decide to go with, or even your own brokerage at one point in time. Who knows? You might decide to start your own brokerage. So the easiest place to actually get your own domain is actually through Google. If you go to domains.google.com, it only costs $12 a year to get your own domain. Obviously, you got to do a little thinking, get a little creative with your name, domain. Usually .com is probably the best, the easiest. I will tell you though that I'm actually starting a new venture in 2022, and I've used, if you actually have too many Google domains or emails, the Chrome and everything starts getting a little funky because it gets confused. So for 2022, I've actually started. I did a lot of research, and for my new venture in 2022, I decided to go with Zoho One. And I actually used Zoho for a prior business. I no longer have that business, but I was going through it again. I was kind of leaning towards it. I didn't really know, but they came out with this new suite called Zoho One, where it comes with all their different apps. And if you're not familiar with Zoho, Zoho is kind of like the Google of, I guess, India, in terms of, I guess, their Google Business Suite. So Zoho has like Zoho apps and stuff, very similar to Google, but their pricing is very impressive. I think Zoho One, if you kind of go all in on it, is $39 per user per month, which is kind of a lot, but it also comes with like the accounting, like it's a whole suite of apps so you can actually run your whole business on Zoho One. One thing about Google, and I said, like, I started my first business in 2013, and I used Google Apps. I got my name, domain, email, and everything through Google. Originally in 2013, it was actually $50 per month, or I'm sorry, $50 per year. Right now, it's actually $120 per user per year. So it may not seem a lot if it's just yourself, but if you have like multiple employees or multiple agents, if you have a team, if you're talking about, spending over $1,000 a year on just email, that it does start to add up a little bit. So I was actually looking for a little other resources, but my main draw to Zoho One was that it's kind of like an all-encompass suite, including the accounting function, which is kind of what we're talking about today. Be able to track, your financial success from last year, what your goals are for 22, and how to clean up last year, and how have better comparable financials in order for you to track yourself going forward. So actually, so like I said, we talked about Zoho One, there's Google, Microsoft has their own for like small businesses also. And then just recently, I think I've read that Apple is actually coming out with their whole Google or, business suite also. So, for those Apple users out there, I believe Apple has now come out where you can, get your own domains. You don't have to use the iCloud domain anymore going forward. If you're looking to brand yourself, again, really highly recommend. I've always used my own domain, whichever brokerage I end up with, whether it's EXP, Real, I always use my own domain, just because it always stays with me. I retain all the information, all my clients, they know I'm always at the same email, even when I go from one brokerage to the next. So going for goals for 2022, right? One of the big things that I always do is that I actually go through and look at my accounting software. So I use QuickBooks. Like I said, for my new business venture this upcoming year, I'm actually going to use Zoho Books, which is amazing. But one of the things that you need to do is kind of go through your chart of accounts. And when you're setting this up, right? So one of the big things in regards to setting this up is that you got to make sure that you use an accounting software, whether it's QuickBooks, Zoho One, there's a lot of other ones out there, but you got to use one that actually can sync up with your credit card and your bank account. And then also obviously use that credit card and bank account only for business purposes. Now, I'll show you guys a little trick. If you're like, hey, QuickBooks is a little expensive for what you got going on. If you actually Google Google Apps or the Google Workspace Marketplace, so these are all the accounting software apps that work with Google. Now, you don't have to use Google to use these accounting software, but they know that. So all these companies, most of these companies, a lot of people do use Google for their email or Google Business Suite. So they have a sync function to where they can sync with your Google account also. So it doesn't mean that you actually have to use Google, but these are different. Instead of like, going out there and trying to find Google accounting software, you can kind of go to Google Marketplace and then look at the different accounting softwares that is made available out there. Like I said, I use QuickBooks. QuickBooks may be a little bit expensive for some people. And like I said, I think Beekeeper's one that I've been pushing Xero. Like I said, I use Zoho. I am going to be using Zoho Accounting for my new business venture upcoming this year. But one of the things that I always need to do in order to get ready for 2022 is really go through my accounting and then really kind of clean up my accounting. And kind of give you guys a little bit of an idea is that, so if you guys ever follow Elon Musk, I think he recently or a few months ago actually wrote an email to all his, I guess, engineers and stuff saying that they need to find a savings on their vehicles that they're building. And it's not going to be in $100 range savings. It's actually going to be like probably 50 cents, $1 tops range. Don't quote me on that. I remember that, but it just really kind of struck a chord with me when I read that, was that he's really looking for some kind of cost savings, but there's nothing big. And what you find out that in business, your expenses, those little bitty expenses begin to add up and starts eating away from the money that you keep in your pocket, right? And I'll use for an example, here's another nugget out there right now is that, for example, I was looking through my books this year and I actually spent $4,200 on showing time for 2021. That's a lot of money. As you know, I plan on transitioning, and I'm speaking here from Houston. I am planning on transitioning to Showing Smart for 2022, which according to the email, I haven't read it in detail yet, is that it's going to be a free service for all, I think it's platinum agents, maybe I could be wrong, but a $4,200 savings from one year to the next, that's a lot, it's a lot of extra money. I think most people would be happy to keep $4,200 in the pocket rather than using it on a showing service, right? So again, and that $4,200 wasn't $4,200 in one day. Obviously, those were per listings. So I spent a lot of money on showing time just on a per listing basis. So all those little, $40 listing fees, they started adding up and they ended up being $4,200. So these little things, they do add up. Kind of going through the chart of accounts. And I really want to show this is kind of my books, obviously without the dollar figures. But if you're a realtor or, so we'll go down towards, and we're going to talk about the team function also. But since I have a team, but basically you do want to break up between your sales, between being a buyer rep and a sales rep. And there's multiple ways that you can break this up, right? For example, if you only work in certain zip codes, maybe, you could break your sales down by certain zip codes or a certain area, or even a certain type of marketing function that you got. So now, whether or not if you pay for advertisement through Google or Facebook, you can start bringing like, hey, this lead or this sales actually came from Google or came from Facebook. So this combination, but at the basic level, you do need to break it up between buyer, seller, whether it's a sales or lease, buyer, seller on each one, kind of going down. And then even if you're for your team members, so you got to break it up between seller, buyer, for team member one, team member two, and kind of going down for the same thing. So the more granular you get, the better it is for you to kind of really be able to track your progress and where you want to go for next year and kind of see on a granular level, like how you're making your money. And the problem I think more so with expenses, for example, is that, for example, like I said, I spent $4,200 on showing time. You kind of start bucketing into a specific expense, and then you kind of have to go back and then kind of break it out again. But so some of these are my income, my cost of sales, right? I got professional photography, showing time, yard signs for each one of the listings. And then even for advertising marketing, I got event marketing, Facebook marketing, marketing software. For example, we use like MailChimp as an example of marketing software that we use, or you've used Active Campaign or KV Core. Those are all marketing software emails or marketing software expenses. We use Nextdoor, Zillow, postcard mailer. So all these things that we break out in terms of how to really be able to track how much we're spending. And then some things that I did was that I actually broke up my dues and subscriptions from like Supra and then your HAR MLS subscriptions. So almost like anything that you incur on a monthly basis, I would say that deserves its own expense line or its own line item. And the reason for that is that then you can kind of see from month to month, what are you spending in addition to what your monthly expenses are. So like I said, so this is kind of like my basic, kind of remove some of the noise that I actually have other items in, but this is kind of my basic chart of accounts. And then this helps me determine how well I'm doing for each team member from either a buyer representing or a seller or listing. And it helps me really evaluate what we need to do or what we need to improve it on for 2022. Now, like I said, the first things first is that you do have to get your own accounting software. And then from there, kind of tie in, create your own separate bank account, and then get a separate credit card specific for expenses only. So I hope that was helpful, just kind of walking through the chart accounts that I have or the accounts that I have for my own business. Like I said, there's so many different ways that you can actually go about creating your own accounts. But basically, like I said, anything that you incur expenses on a monthly basis definitely deserves its own line item. And then, like I said, some of the expenses kind of build on from month to month. So for example, if you started some kind of new marketing, but then once you incur the expense, you don't create a line item for it. And then you bucket it as just part of marketing. And then at some point, if you see that you're incurring the expenses on a regular basis, then it does deserve its own line item. Hopefully that's kind of helpful. I know it's very high level in terms of accounting. Like I said, the first things first is that I really believe that everyone needs to go out and brand themselves. Make sure that you get your own domain And then second of all is to make sure that you have an accounting software. Again, I'm not married to any kind of accounting software. I'm always looking out for something cheaper and more cost efficient and that works just as effectively. I think my first year, I think I found a bank that serves everything that I wanted, a small local bank here in Houston. And for them to provide me a check scanner, it was actually like $40 a month. And then some of their fees was very expensive. And I am spending 100, like over 100, maybe 100, $150 per month on just banking fees alone. Really was not just, it served my purpose, but I knew that spending that amount of money, I mean, $100 a month minimum, that equates to about $1,200 a year. So I ended up going out and looking for another local bank, and then ended up finding one bank that actually provided free check scanners for my office and stuff. So where I went from $100 a month to around like $20 a month in banking fees. Again, the expenses that you save generally are not high dollar amounts like by itself, but as you accumulate them from a month-to-month basis, they start adding up and then really eating away your profits. And those are the small things that you really got to pay attention to. I'll tell you now, I'm saying all this, right? But I'm terrible with it. I actually find new software, new things that I start subscribing to, and then find out that like, wow, it's really expensive. So like another example, I'm actually looking for something different other than Calendly. So like I said, I have a team and I wanted to provide everyone on my team something similar to Calendly software. And I think Calendly, I'm paying about $12 per month. I think I found one just recently where it's $10 per month, but it actually provides 10 different users. So, $12 a month for three, multiple users, or $10 a month for up to 10 users could be cost savings there. So for everything I do, for every kind of expense that occur on a monthly basis, I really go back and try towards the end of the year, look back like, hey, maybe I can find something a little bit cheaper, a little bit more cost efficient, and maybe even better. Just because it's cheaper doesn't mean that it's not as good. It could be a better software. Again, so my advice for 2022, I hope that was helpful for everyone. Good luck to everyone in the new year. Like I said, in order to really gauge where you want to go for this upcoming year, you got to go back to 2021 and really look at what you did well versus what you didn't. You always got to find out, and even if you did something well in 2021, you got to look at it like, hey, how could I do actually better in 2021 than I did in 22? And then also focus on the ones that obviously need a lot of improvements. Those are usually, low hanging fruit, but some of the stuff that you could, do better, look at those items. Also, again, thank you for watching the video. If you guys could like, comment, subscribe, any questions, I'll try to respond to your questions. Again, good luck in 2022. Thank you.